Hello, and welcome to the Feeling Good podcast, where you can learn powerful techniques to change the way you feel. I am your host, Dr. Rhonda Borowski, and joining me here in the Murrieta studio is Dr. David Burns. Dr. Burns is a pioneer in the development of cognitive behavioral therapy and the creator of the new team therapy. He is the author of Feeling Good, which has sold over 5 million copies in the United States and has been translated into over 30 languages. His latest book, Feeling Great, contains powerful new techniques that make rapid recovery possible for many people struggling with depression and anxiety. Dr. Burns is currently an emeritus adjunct professor of clinical psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine.
Hello, Rhonda and Matt.
Hi, David.
Hey,
Hi,
David.
Matt.
Hey,
Oops.
Rhonda.
And welcome, everyone, to episode 266. Yes, welcome to our listeners around the world and across the country. Today is an Ask David episode, and we love these episodes. And I'm going to start off by reading an endorsement regarding episode 256, which was on the intense performance public speaking anxiety. And 256 was part 2 of 2 episodes, which we posted on August 23rd of 2021. And another David, not David Burns, but someone else named David, wrote, "Hi, Michelle. Thank you for being generous with your time and feelings. We share a lot of common ground with our negative thoughts, and you help David, Jill, and Rhonda demonstrate techniques that are so helpful to me and many others. I appreciate this gift you've given me and all the rest of the world. David."
Well, that was a beautiful thing, and thank you, David. And just to remind those of you who may not have heard or may not recall, that was the 2-part live therapy with Michelle, who wanted help with crippling, incapacitating, mega severe public speaking anxiety, and they were really it was a blow away session. It's 2 podcasts. Do you recall the numbers of those podcasts?
Yes, I do. They are podcast numbers 255 and 256.
Yeah. So if you've ever struggled with public speaking anxiety, check them out. And there are other podcasts on public speaking anxiety as well. If you go to my website, feelinggood.com, there's a search function there, and you can use it to search for any topic of interest to you: obsessive compulsive disorder, worrying, panic attacks, depression, self-esteem, and self-defeating beliefs, perfectionism, the love addiction. There's really literally now hundreds of podcasts, helpful podcasts on all of those and many more topics.
Cool. Well, should we dive in?
Yes, let's take a deep dive, because we've got our dear friend and brilliant colleague and compassionate human being, Matt May. Some have described him as the world's greatest psychotherapist. I don't know who said that. They had to be a total nut. Oh, wait a minute. That was me. But we're just so happy to have you with us again and on many recent podcasts, Matt. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, such a pleasure to be here with you, David. Thanks for having me on the show again, Rhonda. And I just like spending time with you guys. So can't think of a better way to spend an afternoon.
Cool. Well, somebody wrote us about a podcast that you were on previously, Matt, podcast 250, on how to tell someone you suck. That was also an Ask David, I think. And this is Ezgi, and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing that your name right, Ezgi. Ezgi asks, "Hi, Dr. Burns. I just listened to podcast 250 on how to tell someone you suck. It was phenomenal. Is there any way to solve pain in the world? Some people are committing suicide because they don't want to suffer anymore. If in your previous podcasts, if I remember right, you said life involves suffering and it's the basis of life. Is there any way to solve pain in the world? Some people, I'm repeating it. Death seems like a relief to some people and an end to all the suffering. Thanks, SG."
Okay, fine. I didn't know he had praised that other podcast so strongly. Thank you for that, Ezgi. Somehow I inadvertently edited that out, a mistake I would almost never make due to my narcissism. And the wonderful, kind comments that you made. This is a great question, and as it turns out, it has a phenomenal answer. That Matt May will now present us with the solution to how you solve the pain in the world. And there is, in fact, a fantastic answer to this question.
I can tell we're going to have fun on this podcast. I have no idea, but I mean, I have a couple just observations. I noticed feeling grateful to Ezgi for his praise, and also kind of just liking him because I can tell he's very concerned and appropriately disturbed by all the suffering in the world and how people will end their lives from depression. And I think it's very appropriate to feel sad about that. And I think it's an exciting topic to explore. My guess is that we'll never achieve perfection in mental health care, but that there would be things we could do to improve mental health care, and I think we're doing it right here, right now, and just having more therapists who are trained up and just ask questions, even doing the testing component in team can save lives, because a lot of times, as David, you've pointed out, people are ending their lives when they could have been helped because the therapist didn't do the testing to notice that they needed that help. And maybe one just very practical thing people could do if they want to do, they could make a donation to the Feeling Good Foundation, which is, busily training up the next, top stellar therapist to be available to more people. But I don't have any kind of magic solution to this. I think it's going to be a problem that persists as long as there are human beings. There will be some suffering, and hopefully there'll just be better and better help for people who need it and want it.
Well, those are great answers. You have any ideas on this one, Rhonda?
Well, I think there's a lot of suffering caused by global or political issues like global warming or dictators or the lack of belief in the government that a person is living under. And I'm not sure if there's that is what we can address with the team therapy, but I do believe we can end suffering that we experience in our interpersonal relationships. And that's something that we talk about all the time by using the 5 secrets and really finding truth in what the other person is saying and being humble and not blaming other people and looking at what our contribution is to any conflict that we're involved in. And I 100% believe that definitely can end suffering between human beings as they're interacting with each other.
If they want to, and of course, most of the time we don't want to. We get pissed off at somebody, and then we want to, see them as an enemy and get back at them. I think everybody has those impulses. I have them myself. As recently as yesterday, I got pretty ticked off at somebody, and I didn't want to resolve the problem. I wanted to be mad at them and, let them know what a loser they were and how awful they were and how superior I was. So there's a huge motivational component there. But my answer to Ezgi would be the same, I think, as a lot of, the sages and mystics throughout history have advised people: don't go around trying to change the world, try to change yourself, focus on yourself. And that's what we do in team therapy. I help people who come to me asking for help, not with the problems in the world, but with themselves. Give me a moment that you were upset, that you would like my help. And it might have been a relationship conflict. It might have been a moment of depression or anxiety or a temptation to give in to one of your habits or addictions. And then we can do some pretty amazing things together. And that's where the magic happens. So, I would say look inwardly. Now, on my website, I have all kinds of resources, mostly I'd say 99% free resources to help people all around the world. There's, the podcast is a good place to start. We've done over now over 250 podcasts, and each one is chock full of good ideas and techniques that can change your life. I've got free depression class on my website. I've got free depression testing, free anxiety testing, and a free anxiety class. There's just all kinds of resources there at feelinggood.com. There's a search function, and you can search on any topic. And then almost all of my books are set up as tools for people to help yourself. You can get used copies of Feeling Good on Amazon. My first book, and still my most popular book, it sold millions of copies. And you can get used copies for just a few bucks each. And some people have told me they're even getting brand new first edition hardbacks. I don't know where Amazon got them, but they're very rare. And I know a guy up in Canada has bought dozens of these first edition hardbacks for pennies at Amazon. And my new book, Feeling Great, is ridiculously cheap. They have some sale on it that Amazon has it on sale, and it's almost the same as a trade paperback. But there's a lot of things you could do. But I would say, heal yourself, and that's the same philosophy we have in our training for therapists. That's why you get so many wonderful podcasts featuring live therapy, because those are therapists working on their own insecurity, their own depression, their own rage, or whatever, in a public forum, so as to show you and therapists around the world how these new team therapy techniques work. So that's our focus, is working with individuals or groups. If I've done a lot of group therapy too, using the same techniques. In my hospital in Philadelphia, we had a huge free program for people in our community, homeless people and people who couldn't read or write, many of them. And they could come in and get unlimited daily cognitive therapy treatment. And that program was just tremendously successful and fun. So that's our take on it. And thank you, Ezgi, especially for those kind of comments. It really blew me away.
Great. So Megan asked, she listened to podcast 14 on the 5 secrets, and she wanted to know, hi, David. I was wondering what your thoughts are about using the 5 secrets when in communication with someone who may not be coming from a place of love or respect, or someone who might weaponize your vulnerability, such as someone with narcissistic tendencies. Thank you, David. I appreciate you and all you do to make the world a kinder and a gentler place.
Well, thank you, Megan. And I'll throw the ball out to Matt and Rhonda on this one first. This is a great question. I might just point out a little kind of a hint there. When inherent in your question is the idea that the other person is to blame. They're bad, you're good. And then how are you going to use the 5 secrets? Of course, there are a lot of people who are narcissistic or aggressive. Let's hear what the experts say, and then I'll throw in my 2 cents.
Okay. I'll start off. Someone who's narcissistic or really self-centered, they respond really well to the 5 secrets. Because, you can do the 5 secrets in any order, but if you do them in the order that they've been written and start with disarming and thought and feeling empathy and inquiry and even throw in some stroking, you're not actually talking about yourself or your own experience until you've gotten to the 4th or the 5th step. And so you're giving completely over to the other person. And if someone is self-focused, they kind of love that, and they melt right away and become easier to communicate with. And so I think so that's what I'm going to say.
So you're emphasizing, if you're working with someone who's narcissistic, stroking and disarming to make the other person feel important rather than agreeing to do battle with them. That's good advice. And I actually have a chapter on this exact topic in my book, Feeling Good Together. What's your take on this, Matt?
Yeah, I'm hearing Megan is feeling maybe a little fearful or reluctant to be vulnerable with someone, and that could defeat her use of the 5 secrets. and I would be interested in, if she wanted my help, can she answer this question herself? Like, why would she be opening up and being really vulnerable with someone who's displayed some narcissistic tendencies when they could use that against her? They could weaponize her vulnerability. Why would she do that? And so I wouldn't be trying to convince her to use the 5 secrets here. I'd be wondering why, trying to get in tune with her resistance and understand it, and maybe what she would decide is that she wouldn't want to try the 5 secrets with someone else.
Well, that's a great point. The first question is outcome resistance. Does she want to get close to this person? And if she doesn't, then all bets are off. You don't need to do anything more. So that's a great answer. My answer is that I never answer these vague questions like this. Mm-hmm. And Megan, inherent in your question is that the other person is to blame. And if you wanted my help, I'd be asking you, would you be willing to look at your own role and see how you're actually forcing the other person to behave as they're behaving? And if you didn't want to see that, then we'd be done. And specifically, but if you did want help, if you were willing to see that, and if you're willing to see that, then you can get in control of the situation. But you have to say, what's one thing that the other person said, and what exactly did I say next? And that'll put an end to all of this abstract talk that we've been engaged in, taking things on a general level, which, as the Buddha pointed out 2,500 years ago, and Jesus agreed with this in his Sermon on the Mount, abstract talk is BS. That's what they both said. Forgive me for my disrespect. But at any rate, when you look at what the other person said and what you said next, then you ask yourself, EAR, did I empathize? No, you'll see you didn't. Did I share my feelings respectfully and openly? No, you didn't. You'll see that. Did I convey warmth or respect? No, you'll see you didn't. And then you'll see, now, what is the effect of my response on the other person? You'll see this, it invites them to continuing being narcissistic or aggressive or whatever. And then at that point, that's the death of the self. When you see, it's my fault, it's not the other person's fault. And if you're willing to do that kind of analysis, then you can use the 5 secrets to transform the whole thing. But we're talking about enlightenment and really sophisticated techniques. And that's my way of proceeding. And so my quick answer to this and all similar questions is, give me an example, Megan, of a moment you wanted help with something real, or imagine what someone might say to you and what you'd say next, and then we're in business, and we can do something really, really powerful, really majestic, and really life changing.
Great. So Telia asks, "Hi, David. Thank you so much for your free information and for podcast 155 on emotional eating, which featured..."
So 150 or 155?
No, it's one. She wrote 150, but I looked it up, and it's 155 is
okay. Thank you.
When we dealt with one emotional eating, and that was when we featured Lorraine Wong, and her client came with us.
That was a popular one, by the way.
Yeah. Well, it was an awesome. Lorraine is a great therapist, and we had her client on, so that was pretty fun. And Telia asks, "Could you please do another episode on compulsive emotional eating? I've suffered with this my whole life. I did listen to episode 155, but I need more help, like actual questions to ask myself or tools to use in the moment. I know with your help, I can be free from this. Thank you, Telia from Australia."
Well, thanks for that. Before I throw it over to our experts, I have 2 quick answers to that. One is just go to the homepage of my website, and at the bottom you'll find a free chapter offer. But it's actually, you get 2 free chapters. These are unpublished chapters from my new book, Feeling Great. And it was too big, so I had to pull out about 10 chapters. And the 2 chapters on habits and addictions were ones I did not publish, so I'm giving them away free. And it has all the latest techniques for emotional eating and drinking too much and any habit and addiction you might want to change. And that's the greatest place to start right there, because these techniques are based on motivational techniques and paradoxical motivational techniques. You'll see the decision-making tool, the triple paradox, the devil's advocate technique, and more. And that would be my first tip. And then right back, if you've got some more questions after dealing with those tools. But ultimately, all habits and addictions are mainly issues of motivation. People say, they overeat because of emotional issues. And I did a study at the Stanford Hospital. And I studied 170 patients admitted to the inpatient unit. And I had detailed information on every conceivable eating disorder, including binge eating, as well as all other kinds of habits and addictions. And emotions played no role. There was no causal effect, except in the opposite direction, that with overeating, the more upset patients were, the more depressed they were, the more lonely they were, the less they ate and the less they weighed. So I think the whole idea of emotional eating, I couldn't find any evidence for it, but regardless, you'll find killer techniques for all overeating in those new chapters. And then my second answer to this would be, if you're upset about anything, whether or not it leads to overeating, or if you have a moment of temptation, pull out a daily mood log or a habit and addiction log that you'll learn about in those two chapters, and write down what are the thoughts that are upsetting you and what are the thoughts that are tempting you. And then there's a lot of techniques for crushing these thoughts, if that's what you want to do. But you've got to use those paradoxical motivational techniques first and find out if you really do want to give it up, because there's tremendous reasons to eat as much as you want, whenever you want. And you've got to deal with those powerful motivational factors before you have any chance of defeating it. And now David will shut up, having spoken too much already.
I love that answer. I thought that was very insightful. And I feel for Telia and anyone who's struggling with overeating or any habit or addiction can just wreak havoc with our lives. And I agree totally, David, that the first and foremost, we'd have to look at the motivational components here and identify how is this actually working for Telia? What are the advantages of emotional eating for her, and what
overeating?
Overeating, yeah, she gets to overeat, and there'd be an enjoyment of that, and probably relief, and it would be all consuming. And
then you contrast with that how much it sucks to diet and exercise.
The deprivation and the just having to face one's feelings head on, and so the decision making form can help identify what the resistance in that way, and if she gets through that part, then things like the devil's advocate technique, which you taught me and it was super helpful for me in my procrastination. It's just a brilliant technique and kind of fun. And then techniques like problem solution, like what could cause failure if she were to make some commitment to eating just a healthy diet. What would be some problems that could come up that she could solve in advance to prevent relapses? And then making a commitment, talking about that commitment with people, having skin in the game, having some reward for good behavior and tracking it in some way, some kind of self-monitoring, and then probably some pleasure prediction. How will she get pleasure in her life if it's not through emotional eating? And
or drinking, if you like to drink. It's fun to drink, and before you have any chance of stopping it, you've got to admit how awesome it is, and drinking isn't a problem. It's a solution. It's a source of great pleasure. And if you want to stop, you've got to come to terms with that. one of the fourth great death, we talk about the four great deaths of the self in team therapy. And the fourth great death is that entitled self, that where you feel entitled to overeat and entitled to drink. And you also have this belief, my life would be diminished without eating or without drinking and getting smashed. That's the real source of joy in my life. And the great death here involves, once you've given up those things that you thought you needed, you suddenly realize I never really needed them. And my life hasn't been diminished. But before you can do any of those cool things, you've got to look at the decision-making tool first and the triple paradox, and see if this is what you really want to do. I speak from a bit of a position of strength right now because I'm in the process of losing a lot of weight, which I realized I had to do. I'm down to 165. I've been as high as 220.
Congratulations, David. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and I'm aiming for 158, and I'm making other changes as well. So I think you got to kind of practice what you preach sometimes. So this is my practice session.
I have that experience too. You know, my son Gabriel eloped in the beginning of the summer, and we had a party for him, and I had a dress that I thought I would look better in if I lost 5 pounds. And I went through everything that you described, David and Matt. And then the other thing that I thought was helpful was creating some counterattacks, because I do that too. What Telia asks, if I'm having a bad day, or if I've had a bad, an experience that has left me feeling somewhat anxious, I think, oh, if only I had a chocolate chip cookie or two, or some chocolate by itself, I'd feel so much better. And I had to develop some counterattacking thoughts, like, I may feel better in the moment, but I won't feel better in the long run. And if I do that, I'm going to break my goal. And I could find, just sit outside and listen to the birds or take a little walk. And I found that very helpful.
We'll show you how that works right now. Who am I, Rhonda?
Are you Rhonda?
Yeah, I'm the devilish Rhonda. And Rhonda, I just want to tell you, look at that chocolate chip cookie. Just take one little bite. That looks so good.
Oh, you're right. It does look good, and it smells really good. And I really, actually really, really want to eat it. But if I eat that cookie, I'll feel really angry at myself. And I might even get sick to my stomach, and I will break my goal of trying to lose 5 pounds before Gabriel's party. So I think I'm going to go for a walk instead.
Oh, but a walk sucks. There's no cookies out there. And just take one little bite. Just imagine it touching your lips and tongue. You
know what?
Pick it up.
That's a good idea. I can smell it. I can imagine it because I've eaten a lot of chocolate chip cookies. So I can easily imagine what it would taste like. And actually, walks don't suck. I could walk and hear some birds, and I might run into one of my neighbors, and it's fun to talk to. So, I get to move my body a little bit from sitting all day. So I think I can skip that cookie.
Who won?
I did.
Big or small?
Big.
Big or huge?
I think I want it huge.
I thought so too. And that's just one of the many techniques. That's called the devil's advocate technique. And you can do it with your therapist. You can do it with yourself. You can have your spouse or partner or a friend help you. And you just write down all of your tempting thoughts when you're tempted to give in, get that, oh, glazed donut. Oh, or I think I'll just have a martini or a beer, whatever your favorite drink is, and write down all those tempting thoughts, and then have a colleague tempt you with them, become the part of your brain that tries to force you or coerce you or trick you into giving in, and then see if you can beat those thoughts convincingly the way Rhonda did. And if you can't beat them, well, then that just means that you really don't want to give up your habit or addiction, and so go for it.
Cool. Well, let's jump into Daniele.
Okay. And Danielle is one of 2 or 3 on the daily mood log. So
right. So Daniele asked first, what upsetting event should I put at the top of my daily mood log? Does it have to be the event that triggered my depression? I'm reading your second book, Feeling Great. The first one, Feeling Good, didn't help me, or I couldn't do it right. And now I'm trying to feel great. I like the book and I like your thoughts. I've struggled with depression and anxiety off and on since 2014. Lately, more on. My biggest problem with the exercise of the daily mood log is that you have to put an event that makes you depressed. I don't know exactly why my depression started, so it's difficult to find an event. What should I do? I feel depressed and I don't know why. These days, the fact that I couldn't get rid of my depression for so long is the main reason why I am depressed. So thank you for your help. Daniele from Italy.
Okay, well, Matt, do you want to start on this one?
Yeah, I've got a couple of thoughts for Daniele. I think there's probably just no wrong answer in terms of what you could be putting on the daily mood log, as long as it's a moment in time where you actually felt depressed, or when you think about it now, some feelings of depression come up for you. And because in any of those moments, we discover the thoughts that we would want to revise and would actually kind of create recovery for you if we go through the model. And it could be this moment right now. For example, you said right now, when you think about how long you've been depressed, you feel quite depressed. And probably there are thoughts you're having right now, like my guess is you have hopeless thoughts, like I'll never recover. But look at the evidence. I've been depressed for so long. And so it could be just this moment right now while you're thinking about how long you've been depressed that you could choose. But you could also pick another one from your past, as long as it's actively upsetting, that when you think about it, there's depressed feelings are occurring, then you can make the magic happen.
That's exactly right. And you say, does it have to be the event that triggered your depression? The cause of depression isn't known. So you don't need to be searching for some holy grail of upsetting events. It just, and anything. I mean, things happen all the time that upset us. And, in our day-to-day lives. Yesterday, I asked someone for help with something and got harshly rebuffed, and it ticked me off. Things happen like that all the time to all of us, I assume. And you can use any of them because the thoughts that upset you will always be the same. That's the fractal theory behind Team CBT. You'll only have one series of thoughts that will always be very similar, the same theme. And that's really good, because once you smash your prototypic negative thoughts, those are the same kinds of thoughts that will come back throughout your life. And once you figure out how to smash them, you'll have a key to recovery from depression anytime you get upset for the rest of your life.
Beautiful.
Love that answer. Yeah.
Loved it. Both of you. Matt, besides being the world's greatest psychotherapist, you're also the world's greatest teacher.
Oh, wow, that's very flattering. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Rhonda. I'm going to come back on your podcast all the time now.
Well, let's add to the daily mood log questions by answering Anca's question, who wrote, "Hello, David Burns. Thank you so much for the podcast and all the wonderful resources you're giving to the world. I've been listening for the last 3 months, and I can say that your discussions with your colleagues and patients have improved my mindset and my perspective on life. They helped me to identify feelings of self-blame and other blame that I didn't even know I had. I also didn't realize how toxic they were. I've bought the book Feeling Great and completed 2 daily mood logs or daily mood journals. I'm still in the beginning and trying to improve my skills for challenging my negative thoughts. I'm just wondering if I'm approaching this correctly. Do I need to complete the daily mood log every day? I'm asking because on the days I do feel down and do have a negative event and thoughts, it takes me a lot of time to complete the daily mood log, around 2 hours. On other days, I feel okay and I don't have upsetting, distorted thoughts. Should I still record one negative event every day with all the negative emotions and thoughts that come with it, or work on the same upsetting event every day, taking on 1 or 2 thoughts at a time? Thank you for your support and your generosity. With gratitude, Anca."
Okay, who wants to jump in first on this practical but important question?
Matt does.
Well, I'm really proud of Anca for all she's done already. it sounds like she's really absorbing this information and making it her own. I think there are a lot of different ways that we can go about homework. There are definitely times where it also takes me, 2 hours or so to complete a daily mood log. And then other times when I'm feeling okay and I don't see much of a point to doing that. I suppose there still may be a purpose in terms of preventing future relapses to maintain, just to be in the habit of it. But I think it very much depends on kind of your own experience and comfort level doing the exercises on your own, and the results that you'd like to get from your therapy. I'll now turn it over to the real master, David, to share.
Okay, well, when I was in private practice, I told people if you can do 15, 20, 30 minutes a day, that's more than enough. And initially, when you're working with me, you won't be able to complete a daily mood log because you won't know how to crush your negative thoughts. And that's why you're coming to me, and a skill that develops over time. And so my patients used to get as many as, 20 mood logs behind, that they would have them like half done, but we still hadn't crushed one thought from their very first daily mood log, which sometimes we had to work on one negative thought, like I'm an inferior human being, or I'm worthless, or I'm a hopeless case. And we might have to work on that one negative thought for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sessions before we suddenly crushed it and they stopped believing it, and that blew their mind. And at that point, your whole brain changes and you become like a guru, and you switch to all those positive circuits in your brain, and that healing, wise, positive voice that's always lurking but suppressed in your brain comes on with full force. And then we would just pick up like a stack of 50 negative, daily mood logs that had been piling up. And then I just start hitting the patient with externalization of voices, peppering them with all of these negative thoughts, and they just suddenly blow them all out of the water. So that's one of the styles, because once that system of negativity in your mind collapses, it tends to kind of collapse like a house of cards all of a sudden. And so, I mean, I only had one patient who was working as much as 2 or more hours a day on his negative thoughts. And I told him, I said, you're not allowed to do that. You were fired, and you've got to spend your time looking for a new job. But if you were to spend like 30 minutes a day or as much as an hour a day, that would be a tremendous amount. And if you're doing that consistent work, even 10 minutes a day on the daily mood log, then the prognosis for recovery is very, very bright.
Mm. But one of the things that you both said is, that she has going for her is her incredible motivation.
Yep. I've never seen a patient with that kind of motivation who didn't achieve their goals in therapy. Never once.
Yep, me too. Well, I'm going to sneak one in here that you didn't put on the list, and this is from Oliver. And part of the daily mood log process is going through positive reframing. And Oliver asked, what is overkill when doing positive reframing?
I'll let Nat take that one first. But explain what positive reframing is, though, because we can't assume that our audience understands these terms.
Okay, yeah. So you introduced the concept to me at a brunch years ago, David. You realized that this is probably the most important discovery of your career. This tool called positive reframing, and that's where we can look in a moment in time. Say we've got a daily mood log. We understand a person's feelings and the thoughts underlying those feelings with crystal clarity. If you ask that individual, would you want to press a magic button, and if you did, all of these negative feelings would go away. If they're interested in that, you could point out that there's a reason to feel hesitant to press that button, which is related to how these thoughts and feelings are related to that individual's best qualities and values and priorities as a person. So when someone is feeling angry, you'll notice that they have a sense of justice and fairness. They really want what's right in the world, or they're kind of fighting for a relationship that they want, or trying to protect themselves and stick up for themselves. Or if they're feeling guilty, that's also their morality speaking, their desire to improve and do better next time, to learn. And that's a good quality they have. And any emotion and any set of thoughts that would be disturbing to someone and we could help them with is also just a part of, their beauty as a human being. And so it kind of puts on its head this idea that what we're doing is treating disorders. That doesn't really work in psychology or in the medical model. The doctor would be putting a cast on your broken bone or something like that. But in the psychological world, it's, we first need to surrender and allow ourselves to admire our symptoms. Our suffering is really a sign of our goodness and awesomeness. And to see that first, and we're not trying to impose any change on them. We're trying to point out that this is really a sign of how wonderful they are. So that's positive reframing, or my understanding of it. And you could see if that lines up with what you guys are thinking too.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the question is, what's overkill? How do you know when you're done? That's his question. You did a beautiful job of explaining what is positive reframing, but when is enough enough? Because we can do positive. Let's say a person does a daily mood log. They've got 9 different categories of negative emotions that are all elevated. They're sad and depressed. They're anxious. They feel guilty or ashamed. They feel inadequate. They feel lonely. They feel humiliated by something that happened. They feel hopeless, frustrated, angry, overwhelmed, and more. And then they may have 10 different negative thoughts. And we could go through each emotion and ask 3 questions. Why is this emotion appropriate given your situation? What are some benefits of this negative emotion? And what does it show about you that's positive and awesome? Show about you and your core values. So we could get 5 positives from each of these 9 emotions, as well as each of these 10 negative thoughts. But, that would take a long time. We'd come up with a list of 50 or 75 positives. So the question is, and it's a great question, when is enough enough? When have you done enough positive reframing?
My guess is it's very user dependent. It would be how someone's feeling while they're doing that exercise. I have noticed that some people feel uncomfortable with it. There's something about it, like they have some resistance to seeing what good things about them. And so they'll quickly burn out on it. And I would refocus instead on noticing the advantages to their looking down on themselves and resisting liking themselves and or just return to empathy. But if someone is saying, I'm actually feeling really kind of good and proud of how I'm feeling about this upsetting situation. To me, that's where we'd want to get to. That's the.
Yeah, well, you like looking down on yourself and you don't want to point out positives about yourself. What does this show about you that's positive and awesome? That's exactly what we want to get to, because you may decide that you don't want to give up your self-criticalness or your self-hatred or your self-loathing or whatever it is. That's what positive reframing is all about. And I might say that part of positive reframing is coming to a breakthrough. And we've talked about this on a previous podcast you were on, Matt, that you suddenly see something that you hadn't had, that you hadn't seen. And it's a pleasant shock to the system. Because most shrinks are trying to help you with something about yourself that's defective or broken. That's the whole propaganda, you might say, that's permeating our culture for the past 100 years. We call them mental disorders that we diagnose and try to fix. And we're trying to get you to see what's positive and awesome about your symptoms. And once the person suddenly sees that, it's not just a matter of going through my book feeling great and looking at the charts of the positive things about sadness or anxiety or something like that, but seeing in your own unique situation something explosive, something mind-boggling that will transform your view of what's going on. An example that we've mentioned before was the great podcast with Sunny Choi, who had intense anxiety at certain times of his life because he was gay. And when he came out, he got very anxious. Then he overcame that. And every time in his life, he's decided to do something radically new for himself that doesn't fit the societal mode. He's gotten tremendously anxious. And he recently, asked for a tune-up in our Tuesday group at Stanford because he was suddenly flooded with anxiety again. And one of his negative thoughts is, I shouldn't have anxiety again because I've overcome this before and I'm an expert on anxiety. I'm a mental health professional, so I shouldn't have these stupid, anxious feelings again. But what was really going on was that he had decided once again to break out of the mold, to give up his part-time job and just work on his private practice and doing things he really wanted to do with his life. And this was another huge transition for him. And so when we did positive reframing, he suddenly made the discovery with my help and guidance that it wasn't true that he shouldn't feel anxious. It was true that he should feel anxious because once again, he's making radical changes in his life. He's challenging his fear of disapproval, and he's having the courage to do what he really wants with his life. And so his anxiety shows his courage. It shows the fact that he's in another fantastic growth phase because of decisions that he has made to pursue his dream rather than doing what society is always demanding that he do in order to please his mother and to please other people. And the moment he saw that, it was a sudden aha situation, and he kind of got it. And we didn't need to do more positive reframing. But positive reframing isn't a mechanical or rote or exercise or just another formula. Team is not about formulas. Good therapy isn't about formulas. Good therapy is about an aha experience that will transform your life, that will not only help you overcome feelings of depression and anxiety, but an insight that will thrust you into what the mystics have called enlightenment, or feelings of great joy and liberation. And there's 4 forms of enlightenment that you can achieve in team therapy, and they correspond to the 4 deaths of the self, and they correspond to the recovery from depression versus anxiety versus relationship problems versus habits and addictions. And I don't know if that made any sense to anyone. It made a lot of sense to me, but it was probably gobbledygook.
I liked it. I really appreciated mentioning a specific example, like the work that Sunny Choi did.
Yeah,
I'm excited. So I didn't know he's out in private practice now.
Yeah, he was working part-time for one of these online, startups that features therapists and stuff. But he decided he just wanted to do what he wanted to do. And he's so creative and so brilliant, such a powerhouse, such a beautiful person. I was just feeling incredibly proud of him. And I always have been. And now his dad is struggling with a severe problem with his aorta. Aorta requires risky surgery in LA, and Sonny's kind of in a state of grieving. And he made a beautiful comment. He says, I'm greedy. I don't want to lose my father now. I want more of him. I love him so much. I thought, boy, what a lucky father. What a lucky man that is to have a wonderful son like Sonny.
Mm.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's inspiring.
Mm-hmm. Okay. One more.
Okay.
This is from Sarah. Hi, Dr. Burns. Your podcasts have been so helpful. I have a question after listening to podcast 55, The Interpersonal Model, Part 2, and It's All Your Fault. On that podcast, you comment on a woman who complained that her husband said, "You never listen," for more than 2 decades, and she wanted to know why men were like that. When she analyzed a brief exchange they had, she discovered that she was forcing him to criticize her, a big surprise. I want to know what you would have said to her husband in this episode if he were the one that came to you about their marriage. If we all caused the relationship problems that we're complaining about, what is it that the husband is doing to cause Sarah not to listen to him and to explode in anger? I see that Sarah is not able to listen and empathize. However, it seems like the husband is able to listen and empathize. What would his next step be? Thanks.
Well, I'll throw it out to you two experts, and I'll give my 2 cents worth.
Do you want to go, Rhonda? Or?
Well, thank you. Sure, I'll give it a go. Although I'm not. Anyway, so we would pull out a relationship journal, and we would look at exactly one thing that the husband said to Sarah, and and then we would look at one. I'm sorry.
Let me start you off because you're starting backwards here.
I am.
If the husband came in, we'd have him do a relationship journal, an interaction that he wanted help with, and say, What did your wife say to you? And what exactly did you say next?
Right. Exactly what we just, you just previously explained it on another question. What did the wife say to him? What did he say? And then identifying all of the feelings that she might have been feeling, that he imagined she might have been feeling when she said that first thing to him, and what feelings that he said that he was experiencing, when he said what his response was. And then just going through the exercise of the EAR that you previously described and seeing what the consequences were.
Of course, he discovered that he doesn't empathize with her. He doesn't share his feelings openly. He attacks her. He keeps saying, "Oh, you never listen," keeps putting her down, and that he's not conveying warmth, love, or respect either. And then what's the consequence of that way of responding to your wife? What will happen? And then he would suddenly see that he's causing the very problem he's complaining about. When he tells her, "You never listen," he'd discover he forces her not to listen. And that's the death of the self. And some people can endure that insight and some people will not. They want to remain in the role of a victim, and they want to remain righteous and angry. But if he was if he wanted to get a more loving relationship with his wife, and he's willing to experience that death of the ego, then he too could use the 5 secrets to change the way he relates to her. And the idea, and I'm interrupting you, Rhonda, I apologize, but I call this the theory of interpersonal relativity. And what the theory is that whoever asks for help will always discover, and it won't be like an idea, but it'll be an ultimate reality that they're 100% causing the very problem that they're complaining about. Let me repeat that. Whoever comes to me for help, whatever the person is, and I don't like to treat couples, I like to treat one person only because they will have the entire solution, the potential for the entire solution within them. But whoever comes asking for help will discover they're 100% responsible for the problem. And this is politically unpopular, so some people hate it when I say this. But you'll discover that you're 100% responsible for the problem. And if you're willing to see that and focus your effort on changing yourself rather than blaming the other person or trying to change the other person, then you can transform a troubled relationship into a loving one in a matter of moments, like 30 seconds. But it takes forever to do this because people resist so intensely. People don't want this death of the self. They don't want to. They may not want to get close to the person they're pissed off at, which is totally understandable. I feel that way myself sometimes. And they may be very stubbornly unwilling to look at their own role in the problem. And then the therapist has to sit with open hands and say, "Oh, well, maybe you're not looking for what I have to offer."
Because what you're saying, so you're saying that everybody has to examine the person who comes to you for help has to examine their role and what they're doing. And they have to give up any iota of blame for the other person.
Yeah, because I did research at Penn. I've mentioned this before. I worked with a young economics graduate student who was a wizard of statistics and computer programming. And I had a big database of husbands and wives or gay couples, over 1,000 in the computer, and all these attitudes that they had. And I asked the computer to kind of, we created, it's probably one of the first forms of artificial intelligence that we trained the computer to test hypotheses about what is really the cause of marital problems. And the computer could we taught it how to create theories out of these variables and test them. So it could create create and test theories of thousands of theories per second. And we had it just grinding through the data, and it kept coming up with the same answer, that all of the theories it had created and that we had suggested could be proven to have no validity whatsoever. But only one variable was associated with problematic relationships, and that was blame. And it wasn't the problem that your spouse is to blame. The problem is that you're blaming them. Blame is the toxic dimension, and blame is not the same as accountability or responsibility. Blame is the creator of hostility and hatred and defensiveness. And at first I was so annoyed when I got that answer, because I was hoping for something very fancy so I could go to the press and have all these new breakthroughs about, the secrets of marital happiness and conflict. And I thought that was too simple. But then, in working with people with troubled relationships, I came to see the absolute truth in what the computer taught me. So I had to learn about love from a computer.
Mm.
That's really cool, David. I like that. I want to just add a couple things that it has also been my experience. I've helped many people with their relationship problem and done this relationship journal tool. And in every example that I've ever done, we've seen the same outcome, which is that the individual who was, maybe they were convinced that the other person was to blame for the problem in their relationship, when they are humble and they write down just what they said in response to that person, they can pick out, oh no, here are my errors and here's where I failed to empathize and stroke them and disarm them. And they're always creating the problem that they're complaining about. And I think that's where you've said in the past, both people are 100% to blame. And if one person can accept that, then the relationship can heal.
Right.
And I just, there's sort of a relief that happens almost immediately. If we can just say, oh yeah, I'm to blame for that. I caused that. I caused you that pain. Then suddenly the other person, it's like blame becomes a desirable thing. No, I'm to blame. And you see the relationship resolve.
But it requires the death of the self, and that really sucks.
It does.
Yeah. We get to be reborn, but it is painful to see.
Once you're dead, it's great. Then you have a loving relationship with that other person, but our pride is a huge enemy. That's beautifully stated, Matt, and what a joy it's been for me. That probably sounds corny and fake and phony, and it is. But nevertheless, let me say that what a joy to work with two of my favorite people in the world, Rhonda and Matt. And you folks have, and perhaps myself have, I think, conveyed a lot of wisdom today. And for me, it's so much fun to have the chance to do this and hang out with you. And let us know what you think about our podcasts, and tell us what you like and tell us what you don't like. I had an idea when out on my daily, walking for exercise, that we should have a kind of a criticism challenge, and ask if people would want to do this, listeners, to criticize us or criticize David or whoever you want in the most brutal imaginable ways, just as a kind of a game, as an exercise. And then our challenge would be to agree with every single criticism and put the lie to it by agreeing with it.
Oh, I think I'm going to try that.
Well, if you folks want to write in and do this, say, here's a criticism of you, David. You're a complete pile of SH or whatever you want to say. And then our job will be to have to agree with those criticisms. Like, David, your team therapy sucks, or you don't have any outcome studies, or you're too critical of other people, or whatever it happens to be. Then we'll have to agree with it and see if we can do that, and see if the agreement, the test of the disarming technique, when you agree with a harsh criticism, do you really prove the criticism wrong? It could be a fun episode. We'll see if we get some hate mail from people, because we get a lot of love mail, and I love that and appreciate it.
I think it would be really hard to find criticisms of Matt, to be perfectly honest. But if people could write in with criticisms of me and Matt too, we could join that. I'd love to do that.
Yeah, criticize all of us, even if your criticisms don't make sense. As long as they're brutal and impossible to agree with, we'll have a lot of fun with that. And of course, it would be a teaching thing. Mm-hmm. And the teaching thing is that the disarming technique is one of the 5 secrets of effective communication. And it can be a game changer. It can be a life changer, but it's hard to learn. And you have to use that kind of exercise to suddenly get it, so to speak.
Well, David and Matt, thank you again for a really great podcast. Matt, it's a joy to see you and to be here with you and learn from you.
Oh, thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, David. I really appreciated being on the show again. Look forward to next time.
Okay, me too. Have a good one, and see you all soon.
See you soon.
Love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
This has been another episode of the Feeling Good podcast. For more information, visit Dr. Burns' website at feelinggood.com, where you will find the show notes under the podcast page. You will also find archives of previous episodes and many resources for therapists and non-therapists. We welcome your comments and questions. If you want to support the show, please share the podcast with people who might benefit from it. You could also go to iTunes and leave a 5-star rating. I am your host, Rhonda Borowski, the director of the Feeling Great Therapy Center. We hope you enjoyed this episode. I invite you to join us next time for another episode of the Feeling Good podcast.